every day matters, and only 12 are going to count. Then it was only 13 are going to count. Then 14 are going to count, and getting ourselves prepared.
I ain't Romeo and now hold. All right, welcome in on this Tuesday, this afternoon live. We're ready to go here. Brandon Justice, the recruiting editor of the Maize and Blue Review. You see him right there, all decked out and ready to go. What's up, Brandon? How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Dennis?
I'm doing great, man. There's a million things to talk about. I was telling you that. Let's start at the top here. It's Michigan winning the Big Ten, and they're on to the college football playoff. I don't know. Do you think Michigan's the best team in the country? Should they have been rated ranked number one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're the best team in the country from the point of view of just looking at the roster and looking what the resumes might, present, because I think Alabama has some impressive wins, with Ole Miss and Texas A&M and a couple other ones. Well, not Texas A&M, that was a loss, but a couple other ones. But at the same time, I think Michigan is most definitely the hottest team in the country, right? And they're a team with a ton of momentum and a ton of things going in their direction right now. Since the Michigan State game and before the Michigan State game, Michigan has really just bullied, for the most part, everyone besides Penn State and Nebraska. So outside of that Michigan State game, it's been a pretty swimming season for the Wolverines. So, going into that Iowa game, you thought maybe they would get challenged there in that big setting, and that was the least they had been challenged all year. So it's one of those things where it's hard to not say Michigan's the best team, but, these things are so case by case, and so the margin of error is so slim for the committee. I don't at all envy them, but, they were probably in the right mind thinking, hey, we're going to put these two teams 1, 2, and 3, and 4 because we don't want to have Alabama and Georgia play back-to-back games. Yes, that's technically not supposed to be part of their thinking, but let's not sit here and think that didn't come into any of their minds, right? Viewership is a big part of college football's money making. It's just how it is. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think you can make an argument for both teams. Alabama's resume overall probably more impressive, but Michigan's looked like the better team week in and week out, especially down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, they could have put Michigan 1 and left and put Georgia down at 4, and people would think, like, wait a second, they
right
on that. Michigan was 2 in the college football playoff, and then number 1 lost, and Michigan, went out and didn't allow a touchdown to Iowa. So I can see how Michigan fans. I think it really does come down to what you're talking about. If you go by the understanding that the college football committee can do whatever they want, they can pick whoever they want, and like if people were clamoring for a rematch, did have a rematch of Alabama and Georgia. I believe that, and people can believe whatever they want. Money does drive it. So money drives it. People really didn't want to see a rematch. They would love to see that college football committee and TV would love to see Michigan beat Georgia, a Michigan Alabama final. They would love to see a Michigan Alabama final. They'd love to see Georgia go down, and I think that would be the biggest ratings getter. But that's all right. That's all right. Michigan's got a shot. What kind of shot do you think they have against Georgia?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be one of those things where both teams are very much so similar. Michigan's offense is just better right now by a large margin. I mean, Georgia's offense has been consistently inconsistent for them against good defenses this year, aside from when Stetson Bennett just decides to throw the deep ball and does it well. That's when they're really good. But outside of that, they haven't had the best offense, and I think that's when Michigan's playing an offense that's struggling, plays in their favor. When they play an offense that's super hot, like they had with Ohio State a couple weeks ago, that's in their favor. So Michigan's defense is really, yes, I will say this. Georgia's defense is better than Michigan's overall. The point I'm trying to make is Michigan's defense versus Georgia's offense is a much better matchup compared to Georgia's defense versus Michigan's offense. Like, I think Michigan's defense has a stronghold on the matchups that they're going to have to go up against with Georgia's offense. A not that good quarterback, inconsistent quarterback race in general between Daniels and Bennett. The running backs are good, but TreVeyon Henderson probably better. So if we're going to go into the whole comparison thing, TreVeyon Henderson probably better. Michigan's not going to see a receiving core better than Olave and Smith and Jigba and Wilson probably for the next 5 to 10 years. So in my opinion, if this defense can shut down Ohio State's got to be the go back for everything when it comes to Michigan. If Michigan were to win this game and the championship comes, you're still going to go back to that game as the reason why the defense, has the, accolades that it has. It shut down an offense that was supposedly supposed to be historic. So that's why I give the edge to Michigan's defense as kind of the X factor in this game if one team's going to come out on top. Georgia's defense is historic. It's great. But Alabama just put on film all the things that it takes to beat them. Does Michigan have Bryce Young? No. But J.J. McCarthy, Bryce Young did a lot with his legs. J.J. McCarthy can do a lot with his legs. So I think this is a game where you kind of see McCarthy come out of the woodwork and do some things that are game changing, similar to the block he made against Iowa.
Yeah, I like all those points. I also think watching Alabama take on Georgia, Bryce Young threw a lot. Like if you're over on that left hash, and this is McCarthy's throw, like you're over on that left hash, you throw it all the way across to the field, and the guy's standing out there. McCarthy makes that throw. He makes it with ease. He might make it better than Bryce Young. So he could be a factor. I like that wild card in this one. You could put yourself in any kind of mindset here. You can get yourself worked up. And if you think about the history of the SEC and, Michigan against, you can think like, oh my God, no, but you can also just look back at Michigan's last two games and you can see how they played. And, you have over 3 weeks to to analyze this game. I would have a mindset that, look, it's, you're 2 games away from, doing something that, you might only do once every 50 years. So, they've got a shot at it. I'd feel pretty good instead of, sitting around talking about how great Alabama is. I do think they need to come out throwing the ball and set up that run. And I like that Michigan has the backs that can, catch it out of the backfield. And I think that they'll go to that. I don't think they're going to be too stubborn in the first quarter, like every series, like, oh, we're just going to counter. We're going to man them up. And we're going to run on this Georgia defense. They might need to in some short yardage situations, but I think they're going to be. I think the game plan is a lot more throwing.
Yeah, and look, you can look at every game this year for the most part for this Michigan staff, and you can tip your cap and say, hey, good game plan. You haven't been able to do that in years past. Michigan's adapted to who they're playing against and playing to the strengths of their opponent's weaknesses and playing to the weaknesses of their opponent's strengths. That's just how it is, right? So. Michigan has that historic run game against Ohio State. Why? Because Ohio State came out without a line, with a really weak linebacking room left over. The formations were giving them a lot of reason to run the ball. There was a lot of 4-2-5 on Ohio State's end. But go back to a game against Michigan State where Michigan still has those same running backs, still has that same personnel. Instead of doing what they've done in the past, which is stick to their personnel and what works for them, they started to scheme against their opponent, which seems so simple and elementary, but it's something that Michigan really hasn't done a ton of in years past under Harbaugh, and they've done it extremely well this year. The same can be said for the game against Iowa, where Michigan didn't go into it thinking, okay, we're going to do the same thing we did last week. We're just going to run the ball. They got creative, went back similar to a little bit of a playbook style like they had against Maryland. How they played against Maryland was completely different than how they played against Ohio State. How they played against Ohio State was completely different than how they played Iowa. And all three of those were completely different against in comparison to how they played Michigan State, where they knew they could pass the ball all day, and they did exactly that despite the loss. So, yeah, I think that the scheme is doing its job, but at the same time, the game planning and the preparation has been far different than years past. So you can credit this run to a lot of things. You can credit it to the new staff and the energy in the room and the culture. You can credit it to the players being more bought in and all of those things. But a big thing that it comes down to is how different the preparation and how different the scheming is now in comparison to years past. And I think that's what gives them – I shouldn't say what gives them, but I should say what should give fans some encouragement is that I do trust this staff to go into this game against Georgia and at the very least have a good game plan. Whether or not they win is, Georgia's a more talented team. Yes, absolutely. But so is Ohio State. So, it's just one of those things where we're going to have to see how this whole thing shakes out.
There you go. And we have, 3 weeks this Friday before it's New Year's Eve. So a lot of time to talk about this one. Michigan in the college football playoff. We're going to get to some recruiting. A lot of things going on there in the Michigan recruiting spotlight. I've got a couple other questions for you as well. And they kind of tie into recruiting, but something that has taken over, I think, social media over the last 24 hours and the Wolverine Den there on the TBMR message board is that Kenneth Walker III is left off the Final Four, and he's not going to be making the trip to New York, and State fans are going crazy. Do they have a point here, or are you giving them the Heisman, or what are you saying? What do you say to a Michigan State fan that says, "Come on, man, Kenneth Walker deserves to be in New York"?
Well, a little bit of that has to do with the program, right? I mean, that program and its fan base is used to being kind of left out and forgotten about because the brand of football in Michigan State just isn't the same as the brand of football with Alabama, Georgia. Hate to say it, but the brand of football in Michigan, despite the back-to-back losses, is still stronger here just because of the history and the decades of college football that's been celebrated here, right? Michigan State is and probably will be for the long run basketball school. I think Mel Tucker's doing a really good job, but let's see it again. I'll tell the same thing to Michigan fans. Like, is Michigan going to be a perennial playoff team? Like, let's see it again. They got the one. Let's see it again. Same ordeal, right? So I think the big thing with Walker not making it for Michigan State fans is it's just another notch in the cap that is their disrespect, list. And it's happened for 10, 20 years now, ever since D'Antonio. And I understand it. I get it. Like they thought he deserved it, and he was clearly the leader for it at one point. But that fall off for Michigan State in the end of the season is what's to blame. And I shouldn't even say fall off. It wasn't terrible. You drop one to Purdue in a letdown spot. You get boat raced by Ohio State, and that's really what did it. I think if that Ohio State game, even if Michigan State loses by 20 plus, if Walker would have had more than 25 yards, he probably would have been able to make his case. But you can't go back with any of those other quarterbacks and look at a game where they just did preposterously bad in a loss. Bryce Young was not good against Auburn, but in the last quarter and in overtime, he made Heisman plays. The Heisman isn't just a numbers thing. It's not just a something where if you lead all your other position players in your category, you're going to automatically find your way in for a bid if you're a skill player. Those things don't happen. It's about championships. It's about big moments. It's about guys who are more valuable to their team, and their team is good. Michigan State went 10-2. I think that they had all the criteria to get a guy like Walker into New York, and I do believe that if Walker would have been there, I would not have batted an eye. I would have thought, sure, absolutely, he's deserving. At the same time, because he's not there, I'm not sitting here losing my mind over it, because he's not going to win it, and he's not going to finish in the top 3. So if we're losing our minds over someone getting invited to an award ceremony, then what are we doing? That's really where I'm at with it. He's not going to win. He's not in contention. Hutchinson has a real chance to finish second in this thing, and going into the conference championships, it really looked like he might actually somehow come out winning it. But Bryce Young did what he did, and he's going to win it, and that's kind of it. But, yeah, hey, in the end, do I think he deserves it? Yeah, absolutely. He had a tremendous season, but I can understand why the committee decided to leave him out.
Yeah, you're right. Bryce Young is going to win it, but if we were sitting here talking at this time last week, he might not have won it. Like I had Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle from Georgia, won, and I had then I had Young 2, and I had Hutchinson 3, and I had Stroud and I had Kenneth Walker on my top 5, and maybe I'm being biased for Pickett. I didn't watch him very much at Pittsburgh, so I didn't have him in my final 5. But you know what? Walker was the leader heading into that Ohio State game. I had him since the first play of the season this year when he took a touchdown to the house, 75 yards or whatever it was. He's been right there at the top all the way to that Ohio State game. But he whatever, he got injured, both of his ankles, whatever else you mentioned, whatever it was, 25, 29 yards. No, that's just not going to get it done. And the other guys had a chance at a final showing here in the championship games. And it only says on that ballot, it doesn't say it has to be a quarterback. It doesn't say he has to be on the win. It's just most outstanding player. And it was really close. And these guys this last weekend had their last chance to make a case. And obviously Young made the case. He's going to win it. If Georgia would have won, and you looked at Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle, then they still scored some points, and Hutchinson came up with some kind of high, he could have won it. I believe that. So yeah. I tell State fans, it's all a lot of them are claiming, ESPN, I'm boycotting ESPN. I'm tired of it. ESPN, so Michigan was because of Hutchinson. They said they're pushing Hutchinson. Well, Hutchinson, he had a really good year. And then at the end, he had 3 sacks against Penn State. He had, one of the greatest games ever that you can have against Ohio State. That's how you close late and impressively. I mean, that's how it happens. I really don't think, they have much to complain about, except, maybe they should have let a 5th guy go, which it probably would have been him. Or certainly if they would have had, you're not going to have 6 guys go there, but so, I mean, it sucks because they had everything there riding into that Ohio State game, and they came, and got popped and killed. And I've been, the shoe's been on my foot before that way. I understand how you can have everything and it can all be swept away, and you feel like the season is like, what the heck, man? Was this a good season or not? So it sucks for them, but I don't think they have much to complain about.
No, and we've been saying for years now, the Big Ten runs through Columbus. How your season goes is based on how you played against Ohio State. The same can be said for Michigan. The same can be said for Michigan State. The same can be said for Penn State. Hell, James Franklin just got a 10-year extension because he got Ohio State's number a couple of times. Literally, that's it. He hasn't done anything else besides that. And more power to him. Penn State's probably that's probably what they're going to be for the rest of their eternity. They're going to be the team that is kind of there and in that top 3 in the Big Ten East. Never going to be a powerhouse, but they're going to win it every few years. And so they decided James Franklin gets 10 years off it. So if we're going based on that criteria, like we have been going on, that your game against Ohio State determines your success in the Big Ten or how you're going to be in the Big Ten that particular year, then how did Hutchinson play against Ohio State versus how did Walker play against Ohio State? Plenty of people want to bring up how Walker did against Michigan. Well, that was in Week 8, and one team's in the playoff, and one team wasn't even in the conference championship. That's just the criteria that they're looking at. It's a trophy that traditionally goes to a champion. You cannot go back in the Heisman's past and look at many winners or contenders that weren't involved in a conference championship or involved in a playoff or involved in a national championship. This just doesn't happen very often. So if you're looking at it from the criteria of, oh, well, he deserved it because of his numbers, absolutely, I agree. I have no problem with Kenneth Walker being in the top 4 or 5. I think putting him in there over a guy like, Pickett maybe would have been understandable. But Stroud, even though he lost to Michigan, his team didn't win, still put up 390-plus yards. Kenneth Walker put up 25 against Ohio State and 6 carries. Is that his fault? No, but that's what he did. I mean, did the coaches not scheme up enough? Sure, they were down 21-0 before he could blink an eye, and that had a problem to do with it. So it's just one of those things where the Heisman is a championship trophy. It's a trophy that's based on moments. It's a trophy based on what comes to mind with that player, and what comes to mind with Kenneth Walker to the national landscape is amazing running back, but they just got blitzed by Ohio State 2 weeks ago. What comes into Hutchinson's mind when they hear it is, 3 straight games on the biggest stage, and he dominated. 15 QB pressures against Ohio State, 7 to go along with the sack in the Big Ten championship against an Iowa team that's traditionally had a strong offensive line, despite theirs not being that this year. It's impressive. It's enough to get you there. So do I think Walker deserved it? Yes. But do I think Walker deserved it and Hutchinson did it? No, that's not an argument. And I think that should be where we settle it is, okay, this isn't an argument of the Michigan and Michigan State kid. It's the argument of, maybe Pickett or maybe Stroud or whomever versus Walker. But really what it should have been is just you've traditionally always invited 5, so you might as well have invited 5 and got Walker in. So that's where I sit on it, But again, if we're getting caught up in award ceremonies, then our minds are in the wrong place.
Well, let's try to get our mind in the right place. It's this TMBR recruiting editor. You can check out his stuff. You'll hear him right here. You see how sharp he is. You can check him out on the Maize and Blue Review. He put out on Wolverine Den last night a best guest list coming up from signing day, which is a week from tomorrow. So what you want to do is go to rivals.com, use the promo code RIVALS2021. And you can be involved in the community of the Maize and Blue Review. You can know what's happening right now if you get in there. We look forward to you to you getting in there. James Franklin, he was close with Ohio State, beat him once, and he's done a pretty nice job against Jim Harbaugh. He also does a good job in recruiting. Right. I think that's probably not lost on the Penn State brass there. Let me ask you a couple questions about recruiting because there's a lot going on here. Something today, I saw a I don't know what you call it, a reevaluation, whatever it is. Michigan got a commitment number 21, the kid from California, Zeke Berry, and they bumped him up to a 4-star. And with that, Michigan's team ranking is all the way up to 11. Heck, I checked it this morning, and I think I had it at 13. So this thing's just been skyrocketing up. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, they're at 21. So they are on a roll, not only on the field, but also in the recruiting rankings here. What do you make of the latest developments in Michigan getting all the way, bumping the top 10 here?
Yeah, and they're actually up to 9 now, as of like 12:50 or something along those lines. Because with Barry's bump, there must have been a couple other bumps. It happened as soon as we were about to get on here. But Josh had texted me about it, and they're up to 9 now. And hey, Zeke Berry definitely deserved the 4th star in my opinion. And we've had the conversation on the Den this week and throughout since we've been there about rankings and about how they think Michigan's guys are a little bit underranked right now, and et cetera, et cetera. That conversation is going to happen every year, no matter what. And there's going to be guys. I mean, look, I don't envy an analyst's position whatsoever. You got to pick a few fish out of the ocean and basically say, okay, these are the best players. Even though you know how they're like, oh, we'll go see this guy. You know how many guys they have to quote unquote go see. Right. So it's hard to, it's a hard position. There's only few tabbed to do it. And of the few tabbed to do it, there's a ton of case studies they have to do throughout the country. So it's not something I envy. And I don't think that these guys are walking into a room like, hey, let's underrank Michigan recruits. It's not what's happening. But all that being said, obviously I've had the pleasure of watching Michigan recruits film from this year a lot more than traditional people would, due to my position. And I do think that there were some guys on the list that should be ranked higher than that. I'm just thinking in comparison to other recruits in this class, in comparison to recruits of the past who had the same ranking. Where does that guy kind of stand? And Zeke Berry was probably the one who stuck out most of them all. He's just a fantastic cover guy who is. Plays at a prominent program in De La Salle in California, one of the best in the country, probably a top 10 perennial college or perennial high school football team every year. So he's doing it against the best teams in Cali. He's a guy who's got the good frame. He's going to fit into the weight room. And the biggest thing is that Michigan is not only its team depending on chemistry and depending on cultural fits, but it's recruiting these cultural fits. It's recruiting guys that Jim Harbaugh is calling the mighty men of Michigan football. I mean, whether you think it's silly or not, that's what they're going after. And Zeke's one of those guys where when he tweeted his commitment, it was I want football players. Jim Harbaugh, I like guys who like football, and he's one of those guys. So yeah, I think the bump is going to continue. I think that Michigan's class is going to continue to rise leading up to signing day. I think they're going to land a couple of guys like we talked about in the best guest list. I think they're going to land a couple of guys in that list that's going to elevate them. And if they are to miss any of them, I don't think it's going to detriment them too much. I think it's just one of those things where this class has really done its job. It landed its diamond in Will Johnson. That was the one they wanted. That was the one they coveted. The 5-star corner out of Grosse Pointe South. That was the must, and they got him, and that's great. Think about how long we were sweating over where Donovan Peoples-Jones was going, who was, kind of the perceived diamond back then in 2017. So same kind of ordeal where Will Johnson was right in your backyard. You had to get him over Ohio State. You had to get him over Alabama. You had to, and he did. And even though Alabama's probably still calling him right now, I don't see him backing out on that. And then as far as the rest of this class goes, there's some other guys who probably deserve a higher ranking or maybe a closer look, maybe an updated evaluation, whatever you want to call it. And, like Colston Loveland's one of those guys, tight end out of Idaho, who, just fits Michigan like a glove, is going to come in here and fit right in, possibly play early. I do like Eric All and Schoonmaker right now, so probably not. But either way, he's a guy who's going to make an impact here inevitably. Tanner loves the offensive line class. So he's our O-line guy from a recruiting perspective. And if he's approving of it, then I'm approving of it. And then there's this question mark with what they're going to bring in defensive tackle wise, because, Deion Walker is probably going to end up at Kentucky at this juncture. But you got to love the edge guys they got because, Cavante Henry's a guy who deserves to be ranked higher than he is, I think. And that's probably where I leave it at is, Loveland and Cavante Henry. And there's, CJ Stokes is universally ranked low. And I'm on the board of him being ranked higher than he is, but it's his level of competition that's making everyone kind of delay that. So, and I get it. But, yeah, that's kind of like my rundown of like, okay, which guys really should be ranked higher, quote unquote, or could be, right? Because I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody they're doing their job wrong. I'm going to sit there and respect that the analysts' jobs are very difficult. But if I had to tab some that could be given a second look to be ranked higher, that's who I would say: Loveland and Barry, who just got it, and Henry and Mason Graham. I think Mason Graham is probably going to be a all Big Ten type defensive tackle here. So, and he's a 3-star right now. And, it is what it is. At the end of the day, Michigan's recruiting the personalities. They're recruiting guys that are going to fit this culture. The guys are going to fit their scheme. Offensively, they're getting playmakers. Defensively, they're getting Will Johnson, who could come in and start, right? He's phenomenal. So, yeah, I think this class is good, and I think it's going to continue to rise. It's got top 5 potential if it can round out these final targets. So we'll see what happens there.
Look at that. If you're listening on the pod, if you're watching, Justice bringing the heat, you can see it and you can hear it. Lewis saying a great story would be Hutchinson winning the Heisman, defensive man, bringing back the Michigan winning culture, wearing his dad's number, being a Wolverine since birth, being a champion. Oh yeah, it would be a great story. No question. Another defensive player. I don't think that's going to happen, but just him going there is great. You needed Alabama to lose, and Bryce Young looked like a Heisman Trophy winner against the Bulldogs. But you're right, it would be a great story. Now, so you're talking about all these guys like Zeke Berry that just committed, and the tight end from Idaho, Courtney Morgan, the director of player personnel. He just was at Michigan for a year, took over for Matt Dudek, who went south, and now we find out that Morgan is leaving to go with a former coach of his at Fresno up to Washington here. How big of a loss is this for the Wolverines?
I think that it's a big loss because of the timing. So this may, make a few people turn their heads a little bit. But I don't think that any commitments are going to be affected by it. I think Michigan's going to hold on to everyone they have right now. It seemed like it was mutual, where it was one of those things where Morgan was really recruiting the West Coast with an emphasis. That's where the majority of Michigan's recruits came from. They have 4 kids from California in this class, most they've had in a while. And, it's good that he had the West Coast, but really, Michigan has always traditionally been a national, over the past 10 years, a national recruiting team, but they do like to stay in the Midwest and the South. And then, sprinkle the West Coast. And obviously in the height of the Don Brown, Jim Harbaugh era, there was a lot of upper East Coast going on, which was kind of confusing some people. They got some good recruits in there here and there. But really where they want to focus on is nationally, with not as much of an emphasis on the West Coast, more so Midwest and South. And so I think the next guy they get is going to be one of those guys, whether it's internal or external. I think that that's going to be one of the primary intentions, is to kind of take a step back and say, okay, we still want to recruit the West Coast, but we don't want to emphasize the West Coast like we did with this past class. Not saying that class was not a success, but just saying these are their roots and this is what they have done and that's what they want to do. And that's, at the end of the day, Jim Harbaugh makes those decisions. I was watching Moneyball yesterday, and, when Billy Beane, Brad Pitt's sitting at the table and all of his scouts are, barking at him about what to do, one of the scouts sits up and says, hey, look, at the end of the day, we're just people recommending things to him. At the end of the day, he's our GM, and he has to make these decisions. We're listening to him. He answers to no one but the owner. Well, Jim Harbaugh answers to no one but the athletic director. So at the end of the day, if Jim Harbaugh wants to emphasize the Midwest and the South, that's what's going to happen. And I think that's what's going to happen moving forward once again. So
you throwing your hat in the ring in there?
Oh, I mean, hey, if they want to give me a call, go ahead. I don't know if they're going to be able to match Josh's extremely lucrative package plan for me, though.
Well, one day, Brad Pitt could play you as Michigan director of player personnel. I've got some sound here to play, and one of them is from one of the new head coaches in the carousel, Billy Napier from Florida. And, a lot of is being made about recruiting down in Florida. His predecessor, had some issues, Mullen, where he was like, I'm not worried about, 4 stars or 5 stars and everything else. So one of the first questions to Billy Napier was about how he's going to be able to pull 4 and 5 stars in and recruit against Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. And here is what the new coach from Florida had to say about trying to compete with those other big dogs in the SEC.
I think the important part here is that we don't get consumed with the stars, 4-star, 5-star. I think it's going to be more about evaluation, right? We're going to go through a very thorough evaluation process. We're going to hire an army of people here. We're going to create an infrastructure, not only in the personnel department, but also from an on-campus recruiting, creative media, name, image, and likeness. We're going to create, we got a great vision for the organization that we're going to create here. So we're the University of Florida, right?
Good answer from Billy Napier. If you're a fan, I can already see, their version of whoever from the den going on there and saying, we're done. He doesn't want to recruit. But what did you think of what he had to say?
I mean, hey, what more can you say? Your introductory press conference, you're gonna sit there and say we're gonna recruit and we're gonna get the best men to play blank football and we're gonna do blank about this football. And it's just one of you got to hoorah. It is what it is, and I get it. I think Billy Napier's a good coach. I think what he did at Louisiana was really impressive, and he didn't just take a job and run. He waited on Florida, right? Not Florida specifically, but he waited a couple of years where he fielded some offers and turned them down and stuck with the Raging Cajuns before ultimately getting Florida's job and going with it. And I was surprised he didn't get the LSU job because obviously being in Louisiana, coaching the Cajuns, you'd think he'd go to LSU and it would kind of be like a perfect fit. That's what I thought was going to happen. But, ultimately goes to Florida and great job for him. And yeah, hey, you are Florida. I'll give you that. You are Florida. You should recruit the heck out of the state of Florida, which is the best state for football players. Texas there too. So yeah, I think Napier will do a good job though.
All right, I want to take it from the football field to the hardwood. Michigan opens up their Big Ten season tonight. They are taking on Nebraska. That is in Lincoln and Tanner Wooten country, right?
Right, exactly, yeah.
So the thing I wanted to ask you here, if you look at the latest poll, you've got Purdue 1, Michigan State 19, OSU 21, Wisconsin 22. If you go down further, Illinois 28, Iowa 33, Michigan 34. So they're way down the list here as they enter Big Ten play. Although I looked at Ken Pom and I thought it was interesting. Purdue ranked number 2, and then Illinois ranked 13, and Michigan, the third best Ken Pom team, which is strange, even just without even looking at any of the numbers or efficiency and everything else. I don't necessarily see the efficiency there for Michigan. So I don't know. How are you looking at the Wolverines, your adjusted view after you've seen them play here in the non-conference heading into this game against Nebraska tonight?
Well, shoot, we were talking about it in our first episode about how it just seemed like this team was such a sure thing. They didn't have to replace much. And turns out they had to replace a lot. Franz Wagner was a good basketball player. Isaiah Livers was a good basketball player. And those two guys aren't that easy. Those two guys plus their experience aren't easy to replace. You see the readiness that Franz had early on had a lot to do with his professional basketball experience in Europe. And, Caleb Houston doesn't have that. And Moussa Diabate, despite a really hot start, doesn't have that. The most experienced guy has been the biggest letdown in Devontae Jones. And, I thought that would be the truth for Michigan at the point. That's really all we had heard. And at the end of the day, Ken Pom is the rankings there have a lot to do with what's expected, right? Like how things are going to play out long term. And I've said from the jump with this team after the rough start or the rough second half against Buffalo, like this team is not going to be as good as we thought they were out of the gate, but it could be Juan Howard's opportunity to kind of cement himself as a legitimate coach. I think he is, and I think he's going to be here a long time, and I'm all about it. But I think he can do a really good coaching job this year if this team turns out to be what it could be, which in the end is still a very deep run in the tournament because there's no lack of skill on this team. They're just not shooting the ball very well right now, and they're not playing together very well right now. And their best player, Hunter Dickinson, isn't playing very well right now. I don't think all three of those things are a constant, nor do I think they're going to be a consistent issue. I think these are things that take time to work out. Dickinson will get out of his slump. I think this team will learn how to play together because I don't think this is a bad coaching staff. It's the same coaching staff. Sadi Washington and Phil Martelli are two of the best assistants in the country. And I think truly in the end, everything will work out with this team. They will be like a 4 or a 5 seed, in my opinion, when it all comes to it. At worst, I think at worst a 6 maybe. So I still think they're going to dance. I still think they're still probably going to be a Sweet 16, Elite 8 type of team in the end. Now, I might be proven wrong, but I do think that this team learns how to play together, and Juan Howard does a good job long-term with this team.
Speaking of Juwan Howard and Hunter Dickinson, you can make a case that Dickinson broke out of his slump with 23 points, 10 of 16 from the floor against San Diego State this past Saturday, including 3 of 3 from downtown. And Juwan Howard was asked about his big man dialing it in from downtown. Here's what he had to say.
Well, Hunter made some really good shots, and he's been working on it. He worked on it in the off season. Speaking of off season, I'm talking about the summertime. He's also worked on it, with me during the season. And the key, like I always told Hunter, is just to stay in it. No need to fade back, no need to walk back when you shoot it. And he's been working on just dialing into that muscle memory. And he got open looks, and he took what the defense gave him. And it's nothing like when the ball goes in the basket. It's a great feeling, not only within the player, but also it breathes life within the team, and it brings life into the building. And the building I'm speaking of is Chrysler.
Well, they're not going to be in Chrysler tonight, but what about the idea that Hunter Dickinson not only can be their man in the post, but he could be the answer to some of their downtown woes with him shooting threes? Are you buying or selling that?
Yeah, I'm selling it from a sustainable perspective. But if he's shooting 3 a game and making 2 or 3 of the 2 of them, or even just 1, I think that's fine. If they start letting him shoot 5 or 6, okay. But I'd probably cap it around there, unless he really starts showing some things.
5 or 6 would be hilarious.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think it's just one of those things where this team is like, okay, how can we revolutionize something? How can we evolve? What can we change? Can't keep doing the same things. We're not just going to outskill everyone, yada, yada, yada. And, Dickinson's getting swamped in the post. Every time he's down there, he's getting swarmed by, 2 or 3 defenders. So by kicking him out, does that take some attention to the perimeter on him and feed open the post to a Giabate type or a Johns type? Maybe. But, I don't know if he's going to be the guy for them from the perimeter. But I do think that, if he can begin shooting out there decently enough to be respected, then it could take some attention away from the post, kick those big guys out at the perimeter, and then open up the post for Michigan to do some things. But we'll see. I don't know if he's going to be getting man-on-man tight defense from the perimeter anytime soon. But if he keeps doing what he's doing or what he did on Saturday, then, he very well may. And that ultimately would equal out a pretty nice scheme change for Michigan.
Yeah, I don't think Caleb Houston is going to shoot 4 or 5 from 3-point range every game either. But if he could be a volume shooter and, he could shoot over 40%, of course, that would be great for the Wolverines. I got one more piece of audio, and that is from Juwan Howard. He was talked about Caleb Houston and him being a complete player, not just somebody that's throwing up jumpers from outside.
Defense is, some of the defensive habits that translate into developing, winning for the team. And those habits are guarding. Times he's going to be asked to guard possibly 1 through 5. And there are times when he's going to be asked to be able to get over on the ball screen or get under and be able to get into the guy's chest and push him to a certain direction when the ball screen is coming, and being a help defense and boxing out, and then last but not least, pursuing those rebounds. And those rebounds I'm talking about are the physicality ones that are in traffic. And that develops, a certain type of mindset and a certain type of level of physicality and toughness that just good. But a young guy is coming out of high school, got to embrace if he wants to stay out there on the floor to help his team win.
All right, there he is, Juwan Howard. A lot to say there. That was the best of what he had to say heading into this game against Nebraska. There he is talking about Caleb Houston, but really telling everybody to play defense, and that could be the key. That's very much in line with good coaches say. So not a huge surprise hearing that from Juwan, but Caleb not just being the 3-point shooter. And it's a game like tonight, Nebraska. This is one of these where you mark down. They got to win this one. Like, they play Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, and Ohio State. They play all those teams twice. They also play Rutgers and Iowa, but they're going to beat Nebraska.
Yeah, you'd have to think. And Michigan's kind of had Nebraska's number in hoops, but I don't know if we're going to see a nice outpouring sadness from the Nebraska basketball fandom on Twitter. But there was a pretty crazy one a couple of years ago, and Aunt Wright, friend of mine, Aunt Wright, I remember he was pretty wound up about that. Well, not wound up, but he was having some fun with it, like he always does. So those were funny. We'll see if they come out. Yeah, to be honest, man, I've been so wrapped up in these this whole football run, and what's been going on recruiting has been so crazy that I haven't watched a lick of Big Ten basketball. So I know Purdue's really good, and I know that Illinois is probably still good, and Michigan State's been playing better than expected. And those are some things that I've gotten, some takeaways I've had. But I got some making up to do, and I got some YouTube clips to watch and some recaps to look at, and maybe watch some of Steve and CJ's film review and on all those things, just to kind of see where things are at. And I paid attention to Michigan basketball. I've watched most of their games. Obviously did not watch on Saturday, given the Big Ten championship and all of that, and that it was going on. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I still think they're going to be okay long term. I still think that they're going to learn how to play together here and play better. And I do think that they win tonight, because you could watch no Big Ten basketball for the next 5 years, but when you open those eyes 5 years later, if your team's playing Nebraska, you got a chance.
Yeah, and for me, I don't think they're the favorite anymore. Purdue and Michigan were the favorites to win the Big Ten. I don't think that's the case anymore, but that's all right. Coming in third or fourth of the Big Ten, and that doesn't mean that that's going to happen for sure. Maybe they can come together. Maybe Devontae Jones will start playing, and maybe they'll surprise everybody. But making the tournament and seeing how they are able to come together is going to be fun. All right, I've kept you way longer than I thought I was here. You got any memorabilia for us, or
sure.
Got something standing by for the Memorabilia Minute? 60 seconds of something out there. And what do we have there? Let me take a look.
Let me see if I can get this away from the TV.
Basketball, which is nice.
Let me see if I can turn this around.
Speaking of hoops there.
Oh, nope, that's not it. All right, here we go. Is that better? No, there might not be a way to see this without on my phone.
Is it Shaq?
It is a Kobe rookie card.
Oh, Kobe!
Out of 1996 finest, Topps finest.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a PSA. It's a PSA 8. So it's nothing great, but it's cool. A couple $100. Nothing crazy. I won it. Lucky guy.
Is that you won it?
Yeah, I did.
How?
I was in one of those silly Facebook games, and I decided to play it, and I won, and it was insane. The guy actually was pretty upset. I was the first player, and the Kobe was the top prize, and I won it on like my third turn, and I bought like 10 turns, which was like $50, and it's like a $200 card. And I also took home this is nothing special, but it's a Mike Trout 9, whatever DCS grading is, and I've got this MLB debut Trout that I won from it as well. And I've got a few others. It just came in. That's why they're all sitting right next to me. You mentioned Shaq.
I did
get a Shaq out of that as well, but it's not a rookie. It's from when he went to the Lakers.
All right.
And then the big man himself, Mr. Chonk, Zion.
Oh,
That's a little winter.
That's got to be a rookie, huh?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, we'll see. He's gotten big. He's getting. We'll see what's in it. We'll see what's ahead for him. He's been eating a lot of Oreos this offseason.
So have I. Hey, you know what? He can always just clean up that diet. You just turn it around.
Oh yeah.
He's
got the resources. That's for sure.
That next meal. All right. Yeah. All good stuff. Brandon, great job. I know, your phone's ringing off the hook. You got a lot of tax. You gotta head to the den and, and start, mingling with everybody. So we appreciate your time. It was great talking with you. It's a fun time to be involved in Michigan sports, and you're right at the front of it. So we appreciate all of it. Take care, man.
Absolutely. You as well. Thanks, Dennis.
See ya. Good night.